Have you ever seen someone walk in and shift the whole room without saying a word? It's not the clothes. It's not the title. It's not the followers. It's the energy, because energy doesn't lie. It speaks louder than your words, louder than your image, louder than your titles. Life doesn't respond to begging. It doesn't answer the question. It answers to power, to alignment, to be certain. When you chase, you repel. When you settle, you shrink. But when you remember who you are, when you stand still in your truth, you become a magnet. You don't have to run after people. You don't have to scream for attention. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. Real energy attracts. Real presence commands. And the moment you stop chasing and start becoming, everything changes. This isn't ego. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. No more shrinking. No more playing small. The respect you want, the love you crave, the life you dream about, it doesn't come when you beg for it. It comes when you become it. I knew a woman, once sharp, driven, beautiful soul. She gave everything, her time, her love, her energy, to people who barely gave her breadcrumbs in return. She would text first, wait on replies, stay up late, wondering what she did wrong. And the more she gave, the more invisible she became, until one day she stopped. She stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped watering dead soil. She didn't grow colder. She grew quieter, more focused, more grounded. And the moment she shifted her energy, the world around her did the same. People started noticing what they once took for granted. Opportunities began knocking without her, begging. Because she no longer needed, she had become, you see, that's the shift. That's the moment where everything turns. Because chasing is noisy. It's frantic. It's rooted in fear. It says, if I don't run after it, I'll miss it. But what most people don't realize is what's meant for you never needs to be chased, it needs to be met. And you don't meet it by force. You meet it by becoming the person who's ready to receive it. When you operate from fear, you emit the frequency of lack. I'm not enough, I don't have it, I need this to feel whole. But life doesn't respond to begging. It responds to belief. It responds to identity. And as long as you keep broadcasting desperation, you'll keep pushing away the very things you say you want. The tighter you grip, the more it slips. Have you ever tried to hold water in your fist? The more you squeeze, the faster it runs through. That's what chasing does. It tells the universe, I don't trust you. And the universe, it listens. But the moment you let go, the moment you breathe deep and anchor yourself in peace, you shift the signal. You stop acting like someone who wants and start embodying someone who has. You begin to walk like it's already yours. You speak like the door is already open. And that right there is where the shift happens. Because energy doesn't follow effort, it follows alignment. Now hear me, alignment isn't something you fake. It isn't some surface level performance you put on so people think you're confident. Alignment is soul deep. It's quiet. It's still. But it speaks louder than any words ever could. Let me tell you what chasing really is. Chasing is what you do when you've forgotten who you are. It's what happens when you hand over your power and say, I need something out there to make me feel complete here. You chase love because you've forgotten you are love. You chase attention because you've forgotten your presence already carries weight. You chase validation because somewhere along the way, you stopped believing that your truth was enough by itself. But when you remember, when you pause long enough to hear your own spirit speak again, everything slows down. And in that stillness, something radical happens. You stop running, you stop reaching, you stop performing, you start becoming. You start waking up in the morning without checking your phone to feel important. You stop letting unread messages shake your worth. You stop refreshing the door of someone else's attention, hoping they finally see what you carry. Because you know, and that knowing is what changes the frequency That's what flips the switch from scarcity to abundance. Not because your outer world changed, but because your inner world shifted first. Let's be real. Most people spend their lives operating from survival mode. That I have to prove myself energy, that if I don't do more, be more, say more, I'll be left behind fear. But you cannot manifest peace while vibrating in panic. You cannot call in something stable while standing on instability. You don't attract what you wish for, you attract what you are. So the work isn't outside, it's internal, it's spiritual, and it's energetic. It starts when you sit down in silence and dare to ask yourself the hard questions. Who am I without the noise? What part of me is still trying to earn something I was born with? What would it feel like to walk through this world already full? You don't have to have every answer today. But the shift starts the moment you decide, I'm done chasing, I'm ready to align. And let me tell you what alignment looks like. Alignment is when you walk into a room without needing to be noticed and still people can't ignore you. It's when you speak less but your presence says more. It's when you don't rush because you trust. You trust the timing. You trust your work. You trust your energy. You trust that what's for you already knows the way to you. It doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you start showing up differently. You stop hustling for crumbs and start preparing for overflow. You stop clinging to people who confuse you and start holding space for those who match your peace. You stop forcing life to answer you on your timeline and start aligning yourself with the rhythm of divine order. Because when you shift your internal state, the world has no choice but to reflect it. Let me be real with you. It takes courage. It takes discipline. It takes emotional honesty to stop chasing what looks shiny and sit still long enough to align with what's true. But that's the difference between a life of grasping and a life of grace. One feels like running uphill in the dark. The other feels like rising with the sun. So no, you don't need to chase. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to prove. You only need to become. And when you vibrate with the energy of already being whole, everything that's meant for you stops running from you and starts running toward you. If you want to change your life, you have to change the way you see yourself. Not the surface. I'm not talking about how others view you or how you dress up to impress. I'm talking about how you carry your name when nobody's around. The way you speak to yourself when things don't go as planned. The way you respond when someone doesn't see your worth. Because listen, until you master your emotions, you'll keep handing your power over to people who didn't earn it and situations that don't deserve it. That's the trap. That's how cycles repeat. When your mood rises and falls based on whether someone texted back, whether someone clapped for you, whether someone chose you, you're building a life on shaky ground. But emotional mastery says this: I decide how I feel. I decide what I entertain. I decide what gets access to my spirit and self-worth. That's the lock on the door. Too many people walk through life on empty, pouring into others, waiting for someone else to notice them just so they can feel enough. But if you don't recognize your own value, you unconsciously train the world to overlook it too. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you constantly overextend, constantly tolerate disrespect, constantly justify your presence, you're signaling to the world that your time, your peace, your essence is up for negotiation. But the moment you start honoring yourself, your energy, your boundaries, your voice, everything shifts. The world begins to rise to the level of the standard you finally set. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about building walls. This is about being so rooted in your identity that you no longer beg for a seat at the table, you build your own. When you align with your worth, the games stop. You don't respond to mixed signals. You don't chase indecision. You don't shrink in rooms that weren't built to hold your truth. You sit in peace and let presence speak. Because real self-worth doesn't shout, it doesn't plead, it simply is. And when you operate from that place, you stop reacting and start creating. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't drown in what was never meant to define you. You learn to step back when you're triggered. You pose before you pour. You protect your inner peace like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is, people may misunderstand you. They may accuse you of changing. And the truth is, they're right. You did change. You stopped performing. You stopped explaining. You stopped betraying yourself just to make others feel comfortable. You chose to evolve. And that kind of growth can't always be understood. It has to be lived. When you trust yourself, when you love yourself without condition, when you stop attaching your worth to outcomes, applause, or attention, you become untouchable. Not because life stops testing you, but because you're no longer at the mercy of those tests. You become unshakable. Because now you don't ask, do they value me? You already know the answer. And that knowing, that's where true power lives. Once you know your worth, the next step is learning to protect it. And that's where letting go becomes necessary, not as a weakness, but as a declaration of strength. You see, emotional mastery teaches you how to hold the line, but letting go, that teaches you where to draw it. There's a difference between being anchored and being chained. Some of us hold on to people, patterns, timelines, and outcomes, not because they serve us, but because we're afraid of the silence that comes after we release them. But I'll tell you this, peace is found in that silence. Not in the noise of trying to force something that's already run its course. Letting go isn't about quitting. It's about clearing space. Space for what's real. Space for what's aligned. Space for the version of you that no longer needs to prove your loyalty to pain. You cannot live in power while staying emotionally tied to what keeps you in survival. You cannot elevate while clinging to what drains you. Holding on too long to what's broken doesn't make you strong. It makes you stuck. And there's a difference. Strength says, I know when to fight. Wisdom says, I know when to release. That's the maturity of growth. You start recognizing when effort turns into self-betrayal. When you let go of what you can't control, you finally make room for what you can. You stop trying to micromanage the outcomes. Stop forcing timing. Stop needing certainty to feel safe. Instead, you shift into trust. And trust isn't passive, it's powerful. It means believing that life will meet you where your alignment lives. That what's meant for you isn't running from you. It's waiting for you to get out of your own way. That the longer you cling to the illusion of control, the longer you delay the flow of grace. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring enough about yourself to stop clinging to what's resisting you. It means you stop forcing conversations that leave you empty. You stop chasing people who only respond when it's convenient. You stop rearranging your values just to stay in rooms that no longer feel like home, because you've outgrown pretending. You've outgrown waiting. You've outgrown being the only one who shows up fully. And now you're choosing freedom, not because it's easy, but because it's right. When you let go, you're not losing, you're shifting. You're exchanging attachment for alignment. You're trading anxiety for flow. You're releasing the weight of proving, of pushing, of pleading, and stepping into the posture of receiving. The doors that wouldn't open while you were chasing, they open when you release them. The peace that eluded you while you were performing, it returns when you become still. And the right people, the right moments, the right opportunities, they don't need to be forced. They recognize you when you're finally aligned with the version of yourself that no longer needs to beg for what you've already become worthy of. Letting go is not a sign of failure. It's the greatest act of faith. It says, I trust who I am, becoming more than I fear what I might lose. That's power. That's alignment. That's real freedom. And once you've released control, once you've let go of the need to dictate every outcome you unlock, something most people spend their whole lives chasing flow, not just ease, not laziness, but alignment that moves without friction. Because here's the truth, what you chase will run, but what you embody is what you attract. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to convince the world of your worth when your energy already speaks for you. See, when you operate from force, you're still trying to prove something. You're still chasing approval, running after opportunities, clinging to people who don't see you. That's survival energy. That's the old rhythm. But when you move into flow, when you begin to trust your preparation, honor your worth, and surrender the outcome, you step into a frequency that doesn't chase, it draws. That doesn't force, it aligns. And that alignment, it's magnetic. It pulls towards you the people, the doors, the moments that were already on their way. They were just waiting for you to stop striving and start becoming. Let me say it clearly, your energy introduces you before you ever speak. You can write the perfect message, dress the part, rehearse the right words, but if your spirit is screaming scarcity, the world will mirror that back to you. The world doesn't respond to appearances, it responds to presence. That's why someone with quiet, unwavering confidence will always command more than someone shouting from a place of lack. Because energy never lies. So stop chasing and start aligning. Stop proving and start being. When you walk into a room with peace in your chest, clarity in your eyes, and conviction in your steps, people won't just notice you, they'll feel you. And they won't know why, but they'll lean in. Because there's something undeniable about someone who's moved from force to flow. Someone who's not trying to get, but who's already become. You don't need to chase what's yours. You need to rise to the level of it. You need to embody the energy of the person who already has it, already owns it, already lives it. Because once your inner world shifts, the outer world has no choice but to follow. That's how energy works. That's how life moves. You stop being the hunter and start being the gravity. Flow doesn't mean passive. It means intentional with every breath. It means trusting your pace without comparing it to theirs. It means knowing that you don't need to be louder, you need to be aligned. Because alignment is louder than noise. And the more you live in that frequency, the more you become the magnet, not just for things, but for the right things. The things that don't drain you, the people that don't play you, the life that doesn't require you to lose yourself to keep it. Remember, you're not here to chase. You're here to attract, to stand in who you are, and let the world rise to meet you. And once you've aligned, once you've stepped out of force and begun to attract, there's one more lesson that separates the frantic from the faithful. You have to trust the process, not in theory, not just when it's easy, but when nothing around you seems to move, when doors stay shut longer than you hoped, when silence feels louder than your prayers. Because alignment without patience is just another form of control. And real power knows how to wait. Anyone can be confident when the blessings are pouring in. But what about when you've done the work, said the affirmations, aligned your energy, and still feel like life is holding you in place? That's where most people break. They question if anything's working. They start planting new seeds every day, digging up the old ones before they can grow. But patience isn't passivity. Patience is rooted faith. It's saying, I know I've done my part. Now I'll stand still and let life catch up. You see, the process isn't punishing you. It's preparing you. Some delays aren't denials, they're divine timing, sharpening your readiness. There are blessings that require a stronger version of you, and until you become that version, they remain just out of reach. Not because you don't deserve them, but because your foundation couldn't hold them. And the universe in all its wisdom would rather make you wait than watch you crumble. This is why trust is essential. Because when you can't see what's ahead, your instinct is to panic, to reach for control, to revert to chasing. But when you trust the process, you hold steady in the storm. You anchor down instead of running. You remind yourself that faith isn't just for miracles, it's for the middle. The long, quiet, unseen middle where character is built, vision is refined, and your inner world is shaped to match the magnitude of what's coming. Think of it like a seed in the soil. The moment it's planted, the work begins, but not above ground. Roots form first. Depth is developed before height. And if you don't know how to honor the root season, you'll never survive the bloom. because the stronger the storm, the deeper the roots must run. So trust it. Trust the detours. Trust the pauses. Trust the people who left and the opportunities that fell through, not because it all felt good, but because it was making you good. Because the wait was working something deeper in you than success ever could. This patience. It's not a weakness. It's knowing your power doesn't depend on proof. It's standing tall even when the scoreboard's blank. It's waking up with fire even when no one's clapping yet. And when you learn to do that, not once but daily, you stop looking at timelines and start listening to timing. You stop asking when and start declaring soon. Not out of desperation, but because your preparation is done, your spirit is steady, and your energy is aligned. And in that space between surrender and manifestation, that's where you become undeniable. And when you've stood in silence, waited in strength, and honored the process, you'll face a final test, letting go of what doesn't grow you. Because not everything that comes into your life is meant to stay. Not everyone who sees your light is meant to walk in it. And not every opportunity with your name on it carries your future in its hands. Sometimes the most powerful move you'll ever make is walking away, not because you're weak, but because you remember who you are. See, rejection is not the universe shutting you down. It's the universe pulling you higher. But too many people take rejection as a verdict. They internalize it. I wasn't enough. I should have done more. Maybe if I just held on tighter. No. Let's be clear. Rejection is not a mirror of your worth. It's a doorway out of what wasn't aligned. It's a course correction from the unseen hand of grace that knows what you don't, sees what you can't, and removes what would have slowed you down later. You have to be willing to leave the table when love is no longer being served. You have to be brave enough to detach from situations that starve your spirit but feed your ego. And most of all, you've got to stop begging people to value you when your very presence is the blessing. When someone can't recognize what you carry, let them go. Because the longer you stay where your worth is questioned, the more you begin to question it yourself. This is about emotional discipline. About mastering your energy so deeply that when a door closes, you don't fall apart, you rise up. You don't chase explanations, you don't demand closure, you just whisper, thank you, and keep moving. Because rejection doesn't break aligned people. It refines them. It sharpens their focus. It teaches them not to settle. And most importantly, it sends them back to their own source. And when you stop chasing validation, you stop shrinking. You stop negotiating your identity in exchange for temporary approval. You start walking differently, talking differently. You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need a seat at anyone's table because you built your own. And when you walk in that confidence, people either rise to meet you or fall away trying. Don't beg to stay where you're only tolerated. Don't explain your worth to those who need subtitles to understand your presence. The very act of walking away is the signal to the universe that you're ready for something more, that your standards are higher, that your energy is not for sale. And once you draw that line, the game changes. Because the things meant for you don't need convincing. They see you, they recognize your frequency. They come with peace, not confusion. They come with clarity, not chaos. So walk away not with bitterness, but with belief. Not with resentment, but with reverence. Because when you reject what no longer honors you, you make room for what finally will. And that's not just self-worth, that's self-respect in motion. You didn't lose anything by walking away. You realigned everything. You made it here not because you ran, but because you rose. And if you've been walking this path alone, misunderstood, doubted, understand this, you were never falling apart. You were being pieced together. Every moment of silence was strategy. Every step away was elevation. Every door that closed was protection in disguise. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the noise, the fear, the need to prove. You were never here to beg. You were born to attract not from a place of arrogance, but from alignment. Because when your internal world becomes rooted, when your energy matches the frequency of your vision, life begins to move around you like it recognizes your authority. That's what wholeness does. It isn't demand. It doesn't plead. It simply exists at a level that forces everything else to rise or exit. That's the magnetism of someone who has stopped asking for permission to be powerful. You no longer broadcast desperation. You carry a stillness that speaks louder than noise. You move like someone who trusts time, who knows that what's meant for them is already on its way, not because they begged for it, but because they became it. You are not here to chase what's fleeing. You're here to embody what's true, to wake up and realize the energy you emit is the signature that writes your future. And the moment you understand that, really understand it, you stop trying to convince and start becoming. You stop looking outward and start vibrating inward. You realize you don't need the world to validate your vision when your spirit already confirmed it. So stand in your worth. Speak with your chest. Set your boundaries like steel. Walk with the quiet, knowing that you are the magnet and what is aligned will always find you. Let your life become a sermon of self-respect, preached not with words, but with how you carry your energy, your time, your presence. Because you weren't sent here to fit in. You were sent here to radiate, to be so full, so focused, so whole that the world doesn't change you. You shift the room. So don't just listen to this message, live it. Walk into every room like you don't need anything from it. Let the silence work for you. Let the discipline build you. Let your energy speak, because now it's fluent in power. And when they ask why you don't beg anymore, tell them, because I finally remembered who I am.